This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Tonight's class is sponsored Le'ilui Nishmat Naomi Bat Rivka and for Refuah Shlema to Rafal Ben Frida. Also want to remind everybody, all women are invited to our women's class on Thursdays at BJX, which is 1601 Quentin Road. 8 p.m. Thursdays, 1601 Quentin Road. Cover all bases. Okay. Also for our men's class, they never usually, make that over here, but apparently it works, the online advertisement, so let's do it also for the men's class. Men's class are Tuesdays at 630 Avenue S. 630 is not the time, that's the address. The time will be 8 p.m. At Tuesdays at 630 Avenue S. Okay. We covered everything? We're good, right? We did everything we need to. Okay, let us begin. So we're speaking about Tisha B'Av. The problem that a lot of us have in Tisha B'Av is that connection. Like, all right, the temple was destroyed. We understand that happened almost 2,000 years ago. We're still weeping. We're still sad. All right, but we understand the concept, or some of us do, some of us don't, but it doesn't actually internalize. To understand the I guess you could say the severity of it, think of this story, this scenario. There was Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz. They when they got married very young, and Baruch Hashem, they were very happy. They had shalom bayit. They had a good harmony at the home. They had parnasa. They had a lot of money. They built a nice, big, beautiful house. They had health. There was just one thing that was missing, and the thing that was missing was they didn't have any children. And it really, took it to heart. After many years of trying, they decided they're going to start trying to go to doctors, right? The first step of action is usually doctors. Once doctors don't work, the second step of action is rabbis, right? Rabbis always have that. Oh, if this didn't work, then might as well try the other stuff. So they tried all the doctors, and they went from place to place. They got different treatments, different ideas. That wasn't working so well. They decided they're going to go to rabbis. And they went from one rabbi to another rabbi, getting blessings, asking for prayers. And eventually, after a few years, they were blessed with a healthy, beautiful baby girl. And needless to say, when people don't have any kids and then they have kids, they act like parents, like all parents should act, even if they had kids, without having to go through that problem. Because what happens is when somebody has such a hard time achieving something, they appreciate all that more. Think of it, somebody, let's say, who had a very, very hard time getting married. A very hard time getting married. When they get married, they appreciate that. There's a different level of appreciation. Now, granted, we don't want that. We want everybody to get married early. We want everyone to have parnasa, beravach. We don't want to have the hardships. But once you have the hardships, you learn to appreciate that like other people cannot even begin to appreciate that. And this particularly the woman, the mother, she, took it really to heart. When she finally had that baby, she quit her job. It was the entire world surrounded the baby. That's it. There was nothing else that mattered other than the baby. And she sang to the baby. She played with the baby. She the baby just made a noise. She jumped out. Doesn't matter if she slept for 30 seconds, which some mothers, that's all they sleep, just 30 seconds. She just jumped out and she's like, oh, something happened to the baby. She was obsessed with the baby. And needless to say, the baby and the mother got very, very closely, attached. A few years go by, the baby gets bigger, and Baruch Hashem, they're blessed with another child, this time a baby boy. And again, the mother is obsessed with the child because she knew what the hardship was. She knew how difficult it was, and she's obsessed, and she's loving, and she's the connection that they have together, the bond that they have is so strong that it literally brings another level of mama's boy or mama's girl to a completely different understanding. Years go by, Baruch Hashem, they're blessed with more and more children. And it's about when the oldest girl is about 17, 18 years old. The youngest, it was the youngest girl who was roughly close to 2 years old, when the mother started feeling a little bit nauseous, the vomiting. So the first thing that she thought is like, Baruch Hashem, what does a woman think when she's married and she's nauseous and she's vomiting? She thinks, and she's married. She thinks that what? She thinks, oh, Baruch Hashem, maybe I'm pregnant. Maybe it's another one. And the problem was that, it was different. There was something a little bit different. So she went to the doctor. She says, doctor, I'm having the symptoms. I think I'm pregnant, but I'm not sure. They ran some tests, and they said, listen, you're definitely not pregnant. But because you're nauseous and you're vomiting, just stay off certain foods and relax, and hopefully it should go away. So she goes, and she follows the doctor's orders. And the nausea and the vomiting doesn't go away. And in fact, it gets worse, and she starts having pain in her stomach. And she comes back to the doctor a few weeks later. She says, Doc, I don't know what to tell you. She says, it's getting worse. And the doctor says, you know what, you're definitely not pregnant. I'll test, we tested you again and again and again. Says, we'll send you for some additional tests. They sent her for some tests, and the doctor said after the test, give me a few days and we'll get back to you. They get a phone call. It was Thursday night. They get a phone call Thursday night, and they say, the doctor says, hey, listen, I need you, the test came back, I need you and your husband, come back in the office, tomorrow right away in the morning. And the doctor hangs up. And the first thing that she felt was her heart go, all the way down. The elevator just shot down. Her heart just dropped. She says, what does that mean? She says, what do you mean I have to go in? Like, if it was good news, the doctor would have said, don't worry about it, everything's okay, it's a virus. But they didn't say come in. And she told her husband, the husband also, they were broken about it. They could not sleep at all that entire night. The next morning, they drive to the doctor's office. It's not even open yet. They're sitting over there waiting. Finally, the doctor comes in. They sit down in the office. And the doctor says, listen, there is no easy way for me to tell you this. But not only are you not pregnant, but you have a very, very serious condition that is, I don't know how to say it, it's terminal. And he said, there are really two options that you have in front of you. It's really in an advanced stage. And we don't know if any treatment is going to work. There is one very, very aggressive treatment that you could try, but we can't promise anything. And the doctor says, take a few days, discuss it, think about it, and then, get back to us and let us know what you decide. And, the husband and the wife, they were torn. They broke down. They didn't know what to do. Like, what are we supposed to do? Like, it's such a shock, came out of nowhere. And they went home, they discussed it, they called the rabbis, they called the doctors, and they decided they're going to go for treatment. Says they can't. The woman's a young mother. Says a young woman. He says, you can't just give up. He says, no, we're going to go for a treatment. They call the doctor, says, we're going to do the treatment. The doctor says, listen, it's not easy treatment. It's going to break you down physically, mentally. It's a very, very rough treatment. Are you sure you want to do this? And he says, yes, 100%. We can't give up on life. We have to. We're going to try. And the doctor says, fine. And they start the treatment. And the doctor warned them, as the treatment progresses, you're going to get weaker and weaker, and it's going to be more and more difficult for you to go and to function day to day as you used to. And in the beginning, it was fine. She came home. She was able to interact with her kids, gave the same attention to the kids. They didn't say anything to the kids. They didn't want to worry them. But eventually, mommy started getting a little bit weaker and a little bit weaker, till the point that, she came home, but she was always in bed. So the kids were asking, like, what's going on with mommy? What's wrong with mommy? And, they said, mommy's sick. Mommy's not feeling well. A few weeks go by, with this going on, and the doctor calls both the parents in and said, listen, says, we've tried the most aggressive treatment that we have, but it's not looking good. It says, we haven't progressed anything. It says, you want my personal, medical, professional opinion? Stop it. You're ruining it. You have a few more months left to live. It says, why are you going to live this way? Get off the treatment, live the last few months that you have as happy that you could be. And he says, listen, I know it's very hard to hear this thing, but you have to accept this is my professional opinion, and you're more than happy to go to any other medical professional to go and get a second opinion. And that's what they did. They went to 4 other medical doctors this was their specialty. They all said the same exact thing. He says, listen, there's nothing to talk about. It's done. He says, you're going to go through all this. In the last few months, your children are all going to see you sick and withered. Better to get off it and live your last few months peacefully. So they didn't have any choice. They decided to get off the medication. And the mother got a little better. But now, when reality hits, when you hear, God forbid, no one should hear this thing, you only have a few months left to live, the world is a different world. You live a different life. And she was obsessed with her children. And this is all that she did. For the next few months, all that she did, she had mommy and me time for everybody. Everybody had one-on-one time with mommy. And she would tell them how much she loves them and how much she cares about them, their strength, their weaknesses. It's as if she's giving them a lecture every single time. Until, the kids didn't understand what's going on up here. Until, she got sicker and sicker, and it was getting closer to the time. And the doctor said, listen, you're alert and oriented right now. You're able to speak. Use this time wisely. She understood what the doctor meant, and she went and she started feeling weaker and weaker until finally she decided she was going to have a one-on-one meeting with each child. And the oldest child came in, and she broke the news to the child. And she says, listen, it's not a secret that mommy's sick, and mommy's not going to be around here that much longer. And the second that the daughter heard this, now generally people understand when people pick up the hints, but when you hear things, it really comes as a shock. Her eyes started swelling up with tears. Tears started dripping down. I was like, what do you mean, mommy? He says, well, we need you here. And she's like, I really want to be here. I really, I understand, but it's coming close for a time that, mommy's moving on. And the older children had a very, very hard time grasping it. And she went and she spent 2-3 hours with each and every child and said, listen, I love you, I care about you. You should know that even though if I'm not going to be here, I'm always going to be caring about you. This woman, when she had a hard time, conceiving, she went and she turned to prayer. That was her outlet. And everybody knew, all the children knew, when mommy prays, no one bothers mommy. Her tears were flowing down. It was something that was out of the world experience. And the mother told the children, each and every child, says, I pray for you every single day. And says, don't think that's going to stop when I'm not going to be here. Every single day, I'm going to continue praying for you. I'm going to continue watching over you. I'm just not going to be able to do it from right over here. The children obviously took it very, very difficult. The youngest child was only 2 years old. And, what are you going to tell a child who doesn't understand? He's sitting over there. He sees his mommy crying. He's like, Mommy, why are you crying? Why are you sad? And, mommy says, Mommy's going away and for a while. And, it's very hard for the child to grasp. And the younger the child was, the harder it was for them to grasp, or if they were able to grasp at all. 2 days after she had this one-on-one meeting with every child, she returned her soul to her Maker. And the funeral, every funeral is brutal. There's no funeral that was like, that went pretty well. Every funeral is a bad funeral. But a funeral that you have little children dealing there with a mother loss, that's something that's completely, no one can relate to that. I remember when I was in high school, I had a very close friend of mine that lost his mother. It was in 9th grade. And we all went to the funeral. The entire class went to the funeral. And, to be honest, I don't even remember where the funeral was. I don't remember any single word of the speeches that happened in the funeral. I was there. I don't remember driving there. I don't remember driving back. I remember nothing. There's one scene that I remember, and I remember very, very clearly. And that scene was when my friend and his family, his older brothers, his younger siblings, came in, and they were just crying and screaming, Mommy, Mommy. So that's a visualization that I can't get out of my head. So that's something that you can't even understand. Unfortunately, what happened. They went, the funeral went, and the Shiva came. When they were sitting Shiva, the family, obviously was taking it very hard. The little 2-year-old was running around. They saw all their siblings sitting on low chairs. They didn't understand she didn't understand what's going on. She's running, she's playing, she's playing with her truck, her doll, whatever it is that she's playing with, and she's having a good time. She's laughing and she's playing. Everyone else is sitting and crying. And the people that are visiting, I'm wondering, like, look at this child, a 2-year-old child, doesn't even understand the severity of the situation that she's in. She's 2 years old, you can't explain it. That 2-year-old child, that's what we are on Tisha B'Av. We come on Tisha B'Av, we're sitting there, we're laughing, we're joking, but like, okay, how many more minutes till we could eat? 762? Okay, cool. We're sitting over there, we're that 2-year-old child. The temple was destroyed. The essence of Judaism was gone. And we're sitting over there, and we're trying to figure out how long we have left to live. Maybe we could watch a movie. We'll pick a sad movie. Don't worry about it, Rabbi. We'll pick a sad movie. Make us sad, it'll make us cry, and that will get us through the day. If we're that type of person, and we all are that type of, if that's our scenario, we're that 2-year-old child sitting at the Shiva playing, and we don't even understand the concept that we're dealing with, the destruction of the temple that unfortunately is coming up. Hopefully we not have to fast this year. But if we do, we have to think about it. What are we doing? Do you go and do you for a second shed a few tears for the temple? Do you even understand? If you don't shed a few tears for the temple, just know you're that 2-year-old child who just lost their mother and has no idea what's going on. If you're able to, the more that you understand the severity of this day, the importance of this day, that's how older you are and that's how much you understand on this situation. Tisha B'Av is the saddest day of the Jewish calendar. And it's something very interesting when you think about it. There are 2 periods in the Jewish calendar where we mourn. We don't listen to music, the men don't shave. We have special customs that we figure out to mourn. So one of them is obviously during this 3-week period that we are in right now, and that is we're mourning the destruction of the temple. Anybody know what other time period we mourn in? The Sphira. Anybody know what we mourn during that time? Well, let's say the Talmidim, right? The Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest rabbis of his generation. He lost 24,000 students. Not just anybody. He's talking about 24 of the thousands of the greatest rabbis died during that time period. We mourn during that time because we lost so many holy and great people. Well, why did they die? Anybody know why they died? Very good. Same idea. See, sisters know. Okay. Sinat Chinam is sort of a stretch. They didn't treat each other with respect. Now, many people don't put this 2 and 2 together. But think of the connection. For the 3 weeks right now, where we are right now, we're mourning for what? For baseless hatred. That is the reason that the temple was destroyed, because of baseless hatred. We're mourning during the other time period in the year, during between Pesach and Shavuot. We're mourning the loss of 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. For what? Because lo nahagu kavod ze lazeh. They did not treat each other with respect. Do you see the connection? Did not treat each other with respect and baseless hatred. There's something going on over here. There's something going on. If you're not putting this connection together, then you're doing Judaism, just cruising through it. Whenever you're living Judaism, whenever you are working Judaism, whenever you are practicing Judaism, you have to think, why? What's going on over here? What am I doing? What is the situation at hand? We have, at one point, we have a fact that they did not treat each other respectfully, which, again, it's under the same umbrella of baseless hatred. It's not the same exact thing, but obviously it's the same umbrella of baseless hatred. This is the only time period in the Jewish calendar that we mourn. Why? What is going on over here? There must be something over here. There are many sad days in Jewish history. There are many sad days. Unfortunately, we have way too many to count. But when you think about it, the part where we mourn, there's like, it's a mourning period, that should stick out to us. It should be like, okay, this is something serious. We got to think about what's going on over here. There's a Gemara in Brachot. In Brachot, page 28. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Before we even continue, we have to discuss who Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lived through the destruction of the Second Temple. Not only did he live through the destruction of the Second Temple, he was the leading rabbi, one of the leading sages of that time. Needless to say, that is huge, right? You're not talking about a rabbi that, he learns part-time, does, if he has a long beard, it splits in the middle while he walks, it's like, you're talking about a rabbi during the time of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. This is before the Gemara, this is even before the Mishnah was written down. And the leading rabbi during that time. And I want to share with you a story that's brought down in this Gemara in Brachot, page 28. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai felt sick. He was terminal, he was dying, it was coming to the end of his life. His students came to visit him. And the students came to visit him. He saw that the great rabbi, the biggest rabbi of that generation, was crying. They went to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, why are you crying? What's going on? Why are you crying? And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said like this. He said something very interesting. He said 3 different points that I want to bring out. He said, number one, he said that, if I was coming in front of a mortal king, a king that dies, so if this king is angry with me, all right, eventually he'll get over it. If this king goes and puts me in prison, all right, eventually he'll get over it, he'll take me out, or if it stays, everything is temporary. If this king goes and even kills me, that's still temporary. We all know that this world is temporary. The next world is the main world. So everything is temporary. But what am I going to do now that I'm meeting the King of Kings? The Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm sitting in front of God. If he gets angry at me, that's eternity. If he puts me in prison, that's eternity. You can't compare that. And then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says something very, very interesting. He says there are 2 paths in front of me. One is leading to Gehenom, the other is leading to Gan Eden. He says, and I don't know which path I am leading to. That's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the greatest sage of that time, said. Then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, goes on and continue. The students, go and they say, Rabbi, bless us. Can you give us a blessing? And the rabbi says, the blessing is, may it be his will that the fear of heaven should be upon you like the fear of people. Meaning that you should fear God like you fear people. So the students were like, that's it? I'm like, we should be a lot higher level. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Halavai, if only you'll be on this level, we'll be okay. And then the Gemara goes on, and this is the 3rd point, that before he died, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, prepare a cheer for Chizkiyahu, the king of Israel, says, prepare a cheer for him because he's coming to escort me into the next world. That is the end of the Gemara. Now, let's try to understand this Gemara. This is a very, very difficult Gemara. First of all, you're talking about the greatest rabbi, roughly about 2,000 years ago, is not sure if he is going to heaven or to Gehenom. If he's not sure if he's going to heaven or Gehenom, where does that leave us? Like, we are not even the dust of the dust of the dust of this rabbi. If he's not sure, can we even begin to consider what our end is going to be? What does that mean that he doesn't know where he's going into? So some people may say, well, maybe it's humility. He's humble. People very much misunderstand humility. People think humility is, someone says, okay, you're a great man. No, I'm nothing. I'm very humble. I'm nothing. I am a nothing of a nothing. That's not humility. Humility does not mean that you don't understand your greatness. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person in the entire world, entire generation, entire world. He knew his value. When it came time, for example, for Korach, He knew to stand up. When it came time against Paro, he knew he didn't get walked over anybody. That's not humility. Humility does not mean that you know that you're nothing, you are nothing, you say that you're nothing, and so on and so forth. Humility means that you know that everything that you have comes directly from God, has nothing to do with you. But you know your power, you know your source. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai knew who he was. He was the leading Sabbath, he was a Nasi, he was the leading rabbi during that time. He knew who he was. So what was the question that he was not sure if he's going to Gehenom or if he's going to Gan Eden? It doesn't make any sense. I remember once before Yom Kippur, speaking to a very small group of people, and one person said, as they got up, I got to go prepare for Yom Kippur. So there was another woman over there. She says, "What do you got to prepare? There's no cooking. They're like, what are you preparing?" She says, "No, I'm preparing spiritually." And this woman answered, says, "Oh, I don't need to prepare anything. I'm good." And the first thing that came to my mind, I held myself back, was, "You're not good. This woman does not dress modestly, does not cover her hair, and she's married. There's the kashrut level is, at best, and you think that you're good." You know what's something very interesting? Most people that think that they're good are the ones that are not good. The people, if you realize it, you have the leading rabbis, even in our generation. I saw a clip. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Chacham Avadia Yosef meeting with Rabbi Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. And they were meeting two great sages at the time. They came together and they were crying. Right? There's it was the story in itself. We're not going to get into it. They were sitting in there. They were sitting in there and they were crying together. Now, what were they crying? Best friends that haven't seen each other for a long time? That was not the reason that they were crying, right? They were sitting over there, and they realized the severity of the situation. They realized that the higher level that you are, the more serious that you see it, which is something very interesting when you think about it. On Yom Kippur, the more you cry, the more serious you feel the day is, you realize the more higher level that you are in. The lower level, if you don't care, you don't cry, you don't have the connection, it's done. You don't even realize what you're missing. The same thing with Tisha B'Av. If you come on Tisha B'Av and you're not even able to shed a single tear, then you know that you have a problem. I know there's some people, especially with men, they told me they haven't cried since they got weaned off the bottle or they got potty trained. I'm like, dude, you have more problems than you can even imagine. All right, there's something different that's going on over here. There's something greater that is going on over here. Now, in order to understand this Gemara, we have to go to a different Gemara in Gittin, page 56. And this Gemara is also during the time of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And there was a siege. The Roman government went and sent in Vespasian. He was the Roman general during that time. And he conquered all the surrounding lands, and he surrounded Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, they had enough resources. They had three very, very wealthy people there. This is during the time of the destruction of the temple. They had three very, very wealthy people. How wealthy were they? They had enough resources to sustain the entire Jerusalem, the entire city with all its population for 21 years. If you think about how much, people just read the story, hear the story, they don't even think about how much food you have to have in your house that you never have to leave the house for 21 years. Think about how much, now think about that for an entire city. There were three extremely wealthy people that had enough for this. And they had storehouses over there in Jerusalem and everything was set up. The problem was, because when there was a siege, there's not like, you can't go out and be like, all right, we'll start it tomorrow, time, gotta go to the supermarket, gotta pick up some, a siege, it's a life and death. Besides having the problem of the siege, they also had another problem. It was an internal civil war going on in Jerusalem. It was split up. There were one group, the rabbis, for example, they wanted to surrender to Rome. They wanted to work with Rome. It says there's no point, we're not going to win, let's deal with it. There was another group, let's call them the Zealots. We're going to call them that because that's what they were called. And they wanted to fight. They wanted to fight to the end. And it was going back and forth. What should we do? Yeah, fight, and it became very, very hostile over there. Till the point that the Zealots went and they destroyed all the storehouses that we had over there in Jerusalem. The three storehouses from the three wealthy people over there, they destroyed everything. Which means now the Jews are no longer surviving for 21 years, if any years. Why did the Zealots do that? They wanted to go and say, listen, now you have no choice, and now you have to fight. They were pushing them to fight. It was during this time that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was sitting over there. He was leading sage, and he said, listen, he says, I got to go speak to the general. I got to go speak to the other general. The general, it's not going to look good. People, we're not going to go into that. I think we spoke about this maybe 2 years ago over here. We spoke about what happened during that time. And, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, I need to speak to Vespasian. Thank you. And he went to, he went to his brother-in-law, Abba Sikka. His brother-in-law was one of the people involved in the Zealots group. And he says, listen, I need to make an appointment. I need to go out of the city wall. I need to speak to the head of the Roman general. And the head of Zealots says, listen, it's not going to happen. They're not letting anybody out. Who's not letting anybody out? The Jews inside, the Jews, the Zealots who are controlling the inner circle, they're not letting anybody in or out. So Abba Sukkah said, listen, here's the plan. He says, you want to go out? This is what you're going to do. Pretend that you're sick. Call your students over. Get it a whole fanfare. Everybody knows that Big Rabbi is sick. And then, and I'm using air quotes, then die. And when you die, put yourself in a coffin and let your students go and carry yourself out to the outskirts of the city. Once you get out of the city, then you'll be out, and then you'll be able to go out to meet Vespasian. This is the only way that this is going to work. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, fine, sounds like a plan, let's do it. He started, word got out that he's sick. Everybody, it came out, and then, a short while later, it says that he passed away. The students put him in a coffin, and they two trusty students, carried him in a coffin and carried him outside. When they carried him outside, they came by the door, and the Zealots were guarding the door. And it says, what's going on over here? I says, didn't you hear? This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He's the greatest rabbi. He's passed away. We're going to go outside to bury him. And the Zealot says, you're going to go bury him? Okay, very interesting. Let's just make sure that he's dead. And they're like, what do you mean, let's make sure? So they wanted to go and they wanted to put a spear through the coffin. And they said, and the rabbi is still alive. And he says, you're going to put a spear through the coffin? Imagine what the Romans are going to say. He says, the big rabbi and the Jews are killing, it's not, where's the kavod? Where's the honor? Where's the respect for the rabbi? And Zealot says, you know what, you're right. Okay, fine. All right, they open the doors and they said, go out. They go out, they put the coffin down, the students come back in. A short while later, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai comes out, Mechayeh Metim, he gets out, and he goes straight into the general's tent of Vespasian. He walks into the tent of Vespasian, and he starts speaking to Vespasian as your majesty. Vespasian stops him and says, whoa. He says, I should get you killed right now on two accounts. Number one, he says, you're treating me like the emperor, your majesty. I'm not the majesty, I'm just a Roman governor. And number two, if I am indeed such a high power official, I'm like an emperor, what took you so long to get here? He says, you should have came to me a long time ago. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai answered him and he said, listen, he said, I'll answer both your questions. Number one, he says, you may not be emperor now, but you're going to be emperor soon. So how do I know that? Because Jerusalem is not going to fall into anybody unless he's a high ruler. And he says it's going to fall into you, and you're going to get into a high official, high government power. Number two, why couldn't I come to you closer? He says, I tried to, I wanted to, but I couldn't. He says that you don't know what's going on in there. There's a civil war going on between the Jews. He says the Jews are fighting against the Jews. It's very unfortunate what's going on over there. The Zealots are taking over. So while the rabbi was speaking, all of a sudden a messenger comes from Rome and say, all hail majesty, Vespasian. The royal emperor. What happened was the royal emperor passed away. And who was appointed next? Vespasian was appointed next. He was appointed next. This is while he was speaking to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The Vespasian was so impressed by how the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had the foresight, had the understanding to know that it was going to happen before it happened. He said, listen, he says, whatever you request, I'll grant it. I'm very impressed with you. Whatever you want, you could have. So, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, okay, I want three things. Vespasian says, shoot, what do you want? And he said, number one, he says there's a town called Yavne, and this is where all the leading sages are. Please, when you conquer Jerusalem, when you conquer everything, please spare the sages. Vespasian says, you got it, check, next, what else is up? He says there is a family, the family of Rabban Gamliel. This is a descendant of the house of David, the king of David. He says, that family, please do not destroy, please make sure that they're intact. He says, check, you got it, what else? And he says, finally, there's a very, very holy rabbi by the name of Rabbi Tzadok. Rabbi Tzadok fasted for 40 years so the temple shouldn't be destroyed. Do not harm him. Get him a doctor so you could heal him because he's very sick because he's been fasting 40 years. He's like, check and done. That's it. The thing was sealed and they went off. This is the three requests that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked. Now, the rabbis, there was Rabbi Yosef and some say it was Rabbi Akiva. They said they didn't really agree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's, three requests. They said, listen, you had a choice from the new emperor to ask for something. What would you ask for? Don't destroy the temple. Why didn't he go big? Go big or go home, right? Why didn't he go big? He said, listen, don't destroy the temple. You're going to be the greatest emperor. You're going to be the great. Don't destroy the temple. Don't destroy Jerusalem. Why didn't he ask for that? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's idea was tefasta meruba lo tefasta more tefasta, which means if you try to get a lot, you're not going to get anything. If you try to get a little bit, you'd gather something. So he said the Romans were so much involved in conquering Jerusalem, it's not going to happen. He says if I ask for that, it's going to get shot down. I wanted to ask for something that's going to go and going to be will be credited and will actually happen. Now, with that story in mind, we have to go back to the Gemara in Brachot that we spoke about earlier. We said that Rabbi Yochanan felt sick. His students came to visit him. He says, I have two roads in front of me. One paved towards Gehenna, one paved to Gan Eden. I don't know which way I'm going. And then he finished off and he says, oh, you want a blessing? The blessing that I'm going to give you is that you should fear God like you fear people. So the question that we ask is the biggest rabbi. What do you mean you don't know which road you're coming? We know, of course. What do you mean? If you're not going to heaven, nobody's going to heaven. Like, out of all the people, why are you so nervous about it? And the answer is, the reason why he was so nervous about it, he was doing a retrospection, an introspection, actually, in his life. And he said, you know what? I made a choice. A very, very large choice. You realize that this choice that he made, the 3 requests that he asks for, for his patient, this is going to affect the Jewish nation for eternity. Whether he makes one or whether he makes the other. And now he's sitting in his deathbed and he's asking himself, did I make the right choice? He says, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know if I'm going to end up to heaven. I don't know if I'm going to end up to hell. I don't know if my choice was right. He was thinking about it. This is a tremendous choice. And, to do this is, by the way, is a very, very important thing that we have to think every once in a while. Preferably, you're supposed to do it at the end of each day before you fall asleep. Did I make the right choices today? You realize we spoke about this on, I believe we spoke about it in Shabbat. That the idea was, why is it during the time of the flood didn't God go and send somebody to do a kiruv on all the people? Let them do tshuva. Why during the time of Sodom and Amorah, why didn't God send Abraham and say, hey, go do kiruv? And the answer is that if you don't think that you're doing anything wrong, you're never going to change. During the time of the flood, they didn't think that they were doing anything wrong. Why? Let's say it says the land was filled with stealing. And we gave you the example last time. If everybody went and they stole just a little bit, and you can't pay anything back if it's less than a shavar pruta, it's less than a penny. How do you pay somebody back? So rather, when they stole it, they didn't have to pay anything. So in their mind, they stole something, but I'm not liable to pay anything. So if I'm not liable to pay anything, I didn't do anything wrong. If I do anything wrong, then I'm never going to change. If you think you're never going to change, that's it. It's game over. So to the story of Sodom and Amorah. Sodom and Amorah did not want to do any charity. Why didn't want to do any charity? Because you should listen to God. If God made you poor, there must be a reason that you have to be poor. If God made you rich, there must be a reason. But to go and start manipulating, I should give you money, make you rich now? So that's change. That's manipulating. That's playing a divine hand. So that's not the right way. So in their mind, their idea of not giving charity, which didn't stem from this, stemmed from their they were stingy. They didn't want to give away the money. They made the excuse after that. It says that because they did that, so there's no choice. There's no any option that they're ever going to repent. Because if you don't think that you're doing anything wrong, you're never going to repent. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, listen, we have to do an introspection. We have to think, did I make the right choices? He had this thought and he said, you know what? Maybe it is. Maybe I didn't do the right choice. In order to answer this, we have to go to the final part of that Gemara that said that the students asked him for a blessing, and he says, "May the fear of heaven be like the fear of people," which means may you fear God like you fear people. What does one thing have to do with another? He's scared of going to heaven. There must be a connection over here. It's written one after another. What is the connection that's going on here? So I was thinking about this today, and I came up with a possible chidush, a possible answer. And this is my own personal, so it may, just bear with me with this with this thought. When we're faced with a hard decision, when we're faced with a tough choice that we need to make, the bigger it is, the more factors we need to consider. Now, think of it like this. Let's say somebody wants to take a certain job, and this job requires a lot of travel. And he wants to take the job, but then he has to ask his wife. His wife is not going to see him so much. The kids are not going to see him so much. It's not only his decision to make. Now it's his wife. Now, and there's so many other factors that he has to consider it. And if she doesn't want it, then that really plays a factor with it. Let's say somebody wants to steal something. And he really wants to steal something. But he's nervous that if somebody's watching. So his decision is going to be changing depending on who he's watching and what's going on over here. When Rabbi Yochanan is saying, he says, make sure that you fear God like you fear people, which means is that if you always go and if you always see that there's somebody watching you, you'll behave very differently. Think about it this way. If people dress a certain way when they go see a big rabbi, some people don't. Some people doesn't matter. I give some of the girls' classes. I don't even understand how they even come to class. Now, Baruch Hashem, we've fixed it. Baruch Hashem, it's becoming very, very modest. But when we first started the girls' class, they know they're coming to a shul. They know they're coming to a Torah class. They know they're going to be sitting in front of somebody teaching Torah. Wouldn't you think about maybe putting on a sweater? Just cover part of your body a little bit. Wouldn't that be? So some people, unfortunately, fell so far that it doesn't even, enter their mind. But I guarantee you, those people if they need to go and speak to a some sort of like high ruler, and this ruler is very, very strict, there's some Islamic ruler, they're going to dress in the hijab, they're going to put everything on, they're going to cover with sunglasses their eyes, they're going to be tznius, but think about it this way. If they would go to this Muslim sheikh, they know they have to dress modestly. But they go to rabbi, whatever, it's God, whatever, the rabbi's not going to say anything. Have the fear of the sheikh like you fear God, then you're going to be okay. But think about it also more. If you have your boss watching you, how will you work? If they're watching you, very differently. If your children are watching you, how will you behave? If you want to watch something online and your child is sitting right over there, are you going to be watching that, or are you not going to be watching that? If you see your spouse always constantly watching you, how will you? It changes your decision. Your choices in life change. If, let's say, somebody who you respect is watching what you're doing, you're going to be very, very careful. Even more so, by the way, if someone respects you. If someone respects you and he's watching you, you're going to even be even more so. Because come on, I have a reputation to stand. This person, even though what he thinks is not true, he might think that you're the biggest righteous, or whatever it is. But even though it's not true, but come on, you feel like you have to do anything, which means that your decisions in life change depending on who's looking and who's watching and what effect that has it. If you think about it like this, if you think about moving through life, imagine that you go through life, that there is a floating video camera, and we don't now that actually exists, these drones that just follow you. They follow you all the time. Imagine you have this endless battery, this drone is constantly following you throughout the entire life, except for your bathroom showers, all those type of things. But anything else, it's constantly watching, and it's constantly filming it. And not only is it constantly watching, constantly filming it, it's also being live streamed to about 2-3 million people. The people are very interested in your life, and to show, everybody's obsessed with it, and you have millions of people are watching it. What difference is your day-to-day going to be if you have everybody that's watching you? Imagine, and let's say they know all the laws of what you need to do. You need to wake up, you have to wash your hands. You need to go to pray, how you're supposed to pray. All the laws are coming. It's a split screen when it comes up, right? When you come to synagogue, it says a split screen. What a righteous Jew does, and then what you do. So they see exactly what should be done and what should not be done. How different is your life going to be? How different is your life going to be when you realize that other people are watching you? How different are your decisions going to be? Are you going to get angry? Are you going to get upset? You need to make a decision. Should you learn or should you go to sleep? Should you go to a Torah class, or should you go and take a very long hot bubble bath? What is your decision going to be? All depends on who's watching you. Says Rabbi Yochanan, not only any big decision, but any decision, if you have the fear of God on you, like the fear of people, then your life decision is going to change. This is what Rabbi Yochanan is saying. So Rabbi Yochanan said, I had to make a huge decision. I had to make a tremendous decision, a decision that I was asked for a request, something that is going to affect the eternity of all the Jewish people forever. Forever. I had to make that. He says, what do you think? I just made it off the whim of my mind? You think I just decided, I need this thing because I owe him a favor, Rav Tzaddik, and that's why I'm causing it? Rabbi Gamliel, he's a good guy to have a connection, and that's why I'm doing it? Yavna is my school, and you think that's why he did it? No, he put a lot of thought into it. A lot of thinking, a lot of understanding. What is the right choice to make? And when you think about it, not only what is the right choice to make for me, but now you incorporate a lot of other people. There's God, there's all the Jewish people, there's everything that it's in factor. Your decisions is going to change in life. How does it end? It ends off that it says, prepare a chair for Chizkiyahu. Meaning that his choice was right. What does Chizkiyahu have to do over here? Why is Chizkiyahu passed away, coming from heaven to escort him to heaven? Chizkiyahu was the only other king that had also Jerusalem surrounded. But Jerusalem did not fall into his hands. He was able to overcome it. There's the time of Sancheriv. There was a big plague and wiped out everything. He was successful. So God sends Chizkiyahu, meaning that Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai, you made the right choice. I'm going to send you the person that Jerusalem didn't fall down, because the choices that you made were the correct, were the correct choices. Now, what were the choices he made? If you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Save the yeshiva, save the whole, the city of Yavne, save Rav Tzaddik, save the family of Rav Gamliel. These are the big choices. How are these the right choices? How are these more right than anything else? So to understand this, we have to look at each one. The first thing that he said was save the city of Yavne. Yavne was the center of Torah learning, which means is he was saving. If you realize, Torah is, people are able to rebuild with Torah. If you think about it, during the time of the Soviet Union, they had, a majority of the Jews, unfortunately, went off. But there was a small core group of Jews that kept on studying. In danger, no matter what, they kept on studying Torah, they kept on teaching the Torah. And, from that, once the Soviet Union disintegrated, their small few group turns into 1,000, and that became the Russian Jewry, became huge, after that. You have also, during the time of the Holocaust, Hitler destroyed all the yeshivas. Hitler destroyed and burnt all the books, all the holy books. And what happened? We have now in Israel and in America more students than we ever had during Europe. Even, and this is very hard to say, but I'm pretty sure that we even have in one school in Israel. There's one very, very large school in Israel that has more students now than all the schools in Germany combined from the Torah. Just one. That was just one. So we have the idea that Torah is the foundation. Torah is the foundation for the Judaism. You cannot be Jewish without the Torah. First of all, Torah's instructions. How do you know how to be Jewish without Torah? Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we need to get the core of Torah, especially the Torah studies, the students, the future rabbis. We need to have them saved because they are the future of the Jewish nation. He says, they save the city of Yavne. Then he goes and he says, "I want save Rabbi Gamliel and his family, the Davidic line." What's so important about the Davidic line? Because that's what Mashiach comes from. He says we're going to be going after the destruction of the temple. People are going to fall down into depression. People are going to fall out. We had the temple, now we lost it all. What is the point? That's it. We're done. Assimilate. That's it. Go. He says no. If we see Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we see the Rabbi Gamliel, we see the Davidic line. We know that there's still hope. Mashiach is going to come. Mashiach is going to come and it's going to rebuild the third Bet HaMikdash. So he says we need this as a part of hope, and hence that's why he asked for the Rabbi Gamliel. And what about Rabbi Tzadok? Rabbi Tzadok was a very, very righteous man that fasted for 40 years. He prayed day in and day out to push off the destruction of the temple. The Jews, until this time, they had the temple. They were able to be sacrificed at the temple. The connection that they had to God was through the temple. Now, all of a sudden, was coming the destruction of the temple. How are we supposed to connect to God? How are we supposed to talk to God? We don't have the temple. Said Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we need Rabbi Tzadok. Rabbi Tzadok, everyone knew that's what he was. He knew how to connect to God. He was the power of prayer. He was the power of fast. He had this idea. Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we need him. We need him for the continuation of the Jewish nation. He is going to show everybody how we're supposed to pray, how we're supposed to connect to God. So when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is asking these three things, it's not just three minor things. It looks like three minor things. It looks it, especially if you're looking from dispassion. It says, what do I care? Of course. But what he didn't realize is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai built a foundation that ended up taking over, destroying, putting Rome to the ground. And the Jewish nation is here, and Rome is not. Why is that? Because we had those three things. We had the prayer, we had the connection to God, we had the Torah, we had the ability to go and understand and continue to know what we're supposed to do, and the connection that we had to God. And finally, we had the Davidic line. We know that Mashiach is going to come. We had the ability to continue on with our life. Now, this is the idea of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Now, when we could push this idea a little bit further, and that is that we said that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says that you should have fear of people, you should have fear of God like you have fear of people. Meaning that God is always watching you. If we take this one step further, we say that not only is God watching you always, but everything that happens is orchestrated by God. Everything that happens is not only orchestrated by God, but also that it also happens for the best. Meaning that this is the foundation of Emunah, the foundation of Bitachon, that everything is from God. That not only is God watching you, not only is God orchestrating it, but everything is also ultimately for the best. Now we have to look at the destruction of the Second Temple, and we have to look also at what our mourning. What do we do in our mourning periods? We mourn for the same idea, the same underlining idea. Sinas kinam lena hagu kavod zelazeh. The question that is asked is, the first temple was destroyed. Why? Because of murder, idolatry, and sexual immorality. So three big ones. The second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. Now the obvious question is, come on. You're comparing murder to baseless hatred? Like, if you hate somebody for no reason and you announce it on social media, he says, I hereby l'shem yichud, putting on all of the, the concentration, all the Kabbalistic intentions, and he says, I want to just announce to the public that I hate this person with absolutely no reason, with pure hatred I have for him. Could Beis Din do anything to you? Could they go and put you in prison for it? Could they go and give you lashes for it? They don't do anything. If somebody goes and murders somebody, there's a death penalty for that. If somebody goes and commits adultery, there is punishment that has happened in this world. How can you tell me that murder is not as bad as baseless hatred? And how do we see that? The first Bet HaMikdash was destroyed for 70 years. And then we had it rebuilt. The second Bet HaMikdash was destroyed because of baseless hatred for over 2,000 years, and we still don't have it almost 2,000 years, and we still don't have it rebuilt. Meaning that this is worse. How can you say that this is worse? And if you really want to tell me that's worse, how come the non-Jews don't have one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach as don't have baseless hatred, don't speak lashon hara? How come they don't have it? If it's so important, this is don't murder, we have it. Don't steal, that's part of the 7 Noach laws. Why isn't baseless hatred part of it? And the answer is we really have to. The idea of baseless hatred is something that is very, very particular to the Jewish soul. and I heard this from Rabbi Daniel Gladstein, said like this, said that your source of your neshama, your source of your soul, is not all what you see over here. Rather, it's all in heaven. And what you have, it sort of trickles down only until it gets to your body, and you have like a small little tidbit on it. This is why when you do a mitzvah, when you do a good deed, it affects the whole world. You know why? Because you are in the whole world. It's like you're not even here. Like the majority of you is up there. Here you just have the lower portion of you. So everything that you do actually affects it. Now, not only that everything that you affects it, but as you go up, it's all interconnected. Like all the Jewish souls are all interconnected. They're all part of one. By somebody having baseless hatred, you're destroying the fabric that holds Jews together. This is who we are. We're one. You break one little hole in a boat, it's going to sink. Regardless if it's in your cabin or somebody else's cabin, it doesn't matter. The Vilna Gaon says, "Va'asuli migdash v'shachanti b'sacham." Build for me a bet hamikdash, says God, and I will dwell inside of it. Build me the temple, and I'll dwell inside of it. The question is, why does God need to be dwelling in a temple? Why can't He be dwelling in the most righteous person, in their generation, in the righteous person's house, in his house of the most? Why does it have to be a temple? The answer is that in order for God to rest in something, we all have to be part of one heart. We all have to be part of one thing. It says, explains the Torah, and it says when they went and when they donated to build the temple, it says Ishki yedvena libai. A person whose heart desires will donate, meaning that when you're donating to something, you become part of it. What does become? Your heart becomes part of it. Where it's all part of it. It's my project. It's my project. You have a close connection. There's a unity in that. Says God, when there's unity and that's where I could dwell. I could dwell. It's not the idea that I need to be with a righteous person. I need you all to be together. And that's why the destruction of the temple, because of baseless hatred, was not the punishment per se. It's a consequence. The only way that I could be in this here is only if you're united. Only if you're united together. That's when I could be part of in the Beit HaMikdash. If you're not united, then I cannot be here. If I cannot be here, there's no point of the Beit HaMikdash, and hence it got destroyed. When there was once a father that had two children and two boys, and the first boy, as he got older, the father goes to him and says, "Listen, you're coming old of age. It's time for you to go out into the workforce and go make a living for yourself. I can no longer support you." The boy says, "I understand, Father. I appreciate everything you've done." Gives a hug and a kiss, and he goes on his way. He starts working with somebody, and Baruch Hashem, he's very, very successful. One after another, he's making this, and after a few years, he's become extremely successful. Builds a huge corporation, buys a huge mansion, has a huge factory. Very, very successful. Years go by. The younger brother also becomes of age. The father tells the same thing. "Listen, it's time for you to go out in the workforce. I can no longer support you, and go and take care of yourself like your brother did." And he says, "Fine." Gives him a hug and a kiss, and he goes out into the world. He goes out in the world. He tries one business, fails. He tries somebody working for somebody, gets fired. He tries this, he tries that, nothing's going. Until he loses everything that he started out with. He doesn't have anything. He's homeless. He doesn't have any money. He's starving, and he's like, "I'm done. What am I supposed to do? My father doesn't have anything. Where am I going to go?" And then he remembers he hasn't spoken to his brother in years. He says, "I'm going to go to my brother. My brother is very wealthy. I'll go to my brother." He goes and he finds out which city his brother is in. He finds out he's in a certain city that's actually pretty far. He decides he's going to make the travels. He finally, after a few days of traveling, he reaches his brother's city. He starts asking around, and they point to a very, very large mansion. He says, "Your brother lives over there." And he goes in. He knocks on the door. No one's answering. He's knocking louder, calling, screaming. Finally, a maid opens up the door. And he says, "Is this the house of Mr. and Ms. so and so?" And she's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Listen, I'm his brother. Can you tell him I'm here? I want to speak to him." And he said, "Listen, he's not here right now. He's in the office. Go to the office. Maybe I'll be able to catch him over there." So he says, "Where's the office?" He gave him the address of the office, and he makes his way to the office. He goes into this huge factory. Sees over there a secretary right in the front, and she says, "Can I help you?" And she says, "Is this the factory of Mr. so and so?" And she's like, "Yeah, it is." She says, "Can you call him? Says I want to speak to him." She's like, "Do you have an appointment?" And he says, "No, but I'm his brother." So she's like, "You're his brother?" He says, "He never mentioned anything about any brother." And he's like, "Just tell him his brother is here. Don't worry about it." And she says, "Fine." She goes. She runs into the back. She comes out a few minutes later. She says, "Listen, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you." He says he doesn't have any brother. He says he must have got the wrong place. And he says, "Is this Mr.?" And he says the name again. And she's like, "Yeah, that's him." He's like, No. Go back again. Tell him his brother. And he says, "Tell him this is my name. Tell him that I'm here. I'm waiting for him." She goes back in, comes out a few minutes later, and she says, "Listen, I spoke to, the boss, and he says he doesn't have any brother by this name." And he says, now he started thinking, "Did I get the wrong guy?" He says, "Can you do me a favor? Can you ask him just one more thing? Is his father this and this? Is this his father's name?" She goes back and says, is this your father's name? And he says, yeah. And she comes back and says, yeah. He says, what are you kidding me? He says, of course that's my brother. We have the same father, the same last name. He says, of course. I says, I don't know what to tell you. He says, he says, no. And he says, I don't care what he says. And he starts walking right into the factory. And she started screaming at him. He says, you're not allowed to go in here. I'm going to call security. He says, call whoever you want. I'm going straight. He walks straight into the brother's office, barges open the door, stares his brother in his face and says, how dare you tell me that you don't have a brother? He says, I'm your brother. What do you mean you're not my brother? You don't remember? We look alike. And the brother, the wealthy, owner stands up, looks at him in the face and says, I'm sorry, I've never seen you before. I don't know who you are. And he says, and the way that you're screaming, I don't like it. And he calls security and says, please escort this guy out of the premise, and please don't ever come here again. The guy gets thrown out of the factory. He says, I don't understand. He says, what's going on over here? He says, but all his doors are locked. What are you supposed to do? He continues with life, but he had no other options, no other choices. Years go by, and both brothers get a message from the father. And the message reads, the father is very sick, the time is coming, and he wants to see both the brothers. So both the brothers, come in. They haven't spoken to each other since that thing. Obviously, the brother, the poor one was very hurt, didn't even look at the other brother. And they go in and they sit in front of the father. The father addresses just the poor brother, ignores completely the wealthy one. He says, you're my favorite son. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. He says, I'm so proud of you for everything that you have accomplished in life, and gives him blessing after blessing, completely ignoring the other brother. For hours, this guy's just talking just one-on-one as if the other one's not there. And every time the other brother tried to interject, the father kept on talking louder as if he's, I'm talking to somebody over here, please. He's talking, and eventually, after a few hours, the wealthy brother couldn't do it anymore. He stands up, he smacks the table, says, I don't understand. He says, I'm also your son. He says, why are you not talking to me? And the father looks at him, and he says, if he is not your brother, I am not your father. We come and we pray to God. We say, Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven. And we're asking, Father, please, can you help us with this? We need parnasa, we need money, we need to buy this, we need to pay for the mortgage. There's so many things that we pray for God for. Our Father, our Father. And our Father in heaven goes, and it says, I'm your Father. It says, but you don't treat the other Jews like your brother. He says, if they're not your brothers, then I'm not your father. He says, we know why we have so much problems now? He says, because of the lack of unity. We don't have that connection even to our Father in heaven. If we start loving each and every Jew like our brother, then we will have a Father in heaven that's going to be like, yes, of course. Of course we have our Father in heaven, don't get me wrong. And our Father, we should always pray to our Father. But think about the power of prayer that you'll have, the power that you'll have a connection when, this is my brothers. We're all one, we're all united. The idea, now we have to think about baseless hatred. I'm going to close off with this, actually a few more minutes or we'll finish off. What is the idea of baseless hatred? What does that even mean? How could you know what baseless hatred means? Baseless hatred means, someone comes over to you and says, do you know this guy, Charlie, Shatowski, whatever, and you're like, no, I've never met him before. He's like, oh yeah, that's him right over there. He just moved in from Mars. He's right over here. No one ever seen him before. And he's like, so what do you think about Charlie? And you say, I hate him. I hate him so. I just want only bad things to happen to him. That's baseless hatred. That's hating for absolutely no reason. You have no idea what this guy is. You have absolutely no connection, no prior understanding, and you hate him. That is baseless hatred. Who do you know has baseless hatred? Some people hate their face. People's face, I don't like the way he looks. That's not baseless. You hate his face. That's a reason. Some people, hate somebody because they stole money. That's a reason. What is baseless hatred? Can you understand that? What does it mean that I hate somebody for no reason? Everything has a reason. It's so difficult to hate somebody for no reason at all. I'm hating him for absolutely no reason. Just solely for the sake of hating. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I have absolutely nothing against this person. I just hate him completely. It doesn't work that way. There's always a reason. So why and how do we say that the temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred? What is baseless hatred? The Vilna Gaon goes, and actually before we go that, during the time of the spies in Parshat Shalach, God tells Moshe, if you want to send spies, send spies. Moshe sends spies, the spies come back. When did they come back? On the 9th of Av. They came back on the 9th of Av, and with a very, very bad report. What was the report? It's very bad, Israel. They have like the giants, everybody's on steroids over there. We can't, even the fruits and vegetables are on steroids. You're not going to be able to defeat. It's a very, 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 very strong place. And what did the people do? The people started crying. They started crying. They're like, we're not going to make it. We're not going to survive. We're not going to be able to pass this ordeal. And God says, oh, you're crying. You're crying for absolutely no reason at all? He He says, now I'm going to make it a day that you're going to cry. And Tisha B'Av, that was the day of both the destructions of both temples. And we have many, many other problems that happened on Tisha B'Av. Now the question is, he says, what's the problem about crying? You're not allowed to cry for no reason? Bal Tashas, you can't waste tears? Like, is it a problem if you just cry for no reason? Like what? You don't get, God says, you're crying for no reason at all? Fine, so let them cry. Where does it say in the Torah you're not allowed to cry? Where does it say that you have to cry only for a specific reason? No, you can cry whatever you want. It's an emotion. You cry whatever you want. Why is God punishing the Jewish people and saying, you're crying for no reason, now you're going to get punished? And the answer is, it's not because of the tears. It's the source of those tears. What was the source of the tears? God told the Jewish nation the land is good. If God told the Jewish people the land is good, there is no reason for you to cry. God told you, why are you scared? God told you of it. There's a lack of Emunah. You don't have any faith in God. If you don't have any faith in God, now you're going to have a problem. He says, now you don't have any faith in God, this is going to be, this is going to be a problem. Now, when we go back to the first thing that we said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we said the whole essence of it was really an underlining of Emunah. If you believe, if you fear God like you fear other people, which means is that you always know that God's watching you. And if you always know that God's watching, you know that also God's orchestrating everything that you're doing. And if you know that God's orchestrating everything you do, you know that He's doing everything for the best. If you have all that, then you have the faith of God, then you have Emunah, then nothing's going to be able to take you down. And this is why it says in the Pasuk in Vayikra, in Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18, it says, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Hashem." You have to love your friend like yourself. I am God. Why does the Torah end? The pasuk ends. You have to love your friend like yourself. I am God. Like, why do we have to stick in "I am God" in that sentence? You should love your friend like yourself. Finish. That's it. What is ani Hashem? I am God. And the answer is that if you know that I am God, if you know that there's a God that's watching everything, then you will then you will love every single Jew of yourself, because there's never going to be a hatred. Because if you believe that everything is from God, you will never have any problem. You will always love everybody. You will always love everybody like yourself, because what are you shooting the messenger? Because somebody did something wrong to you? Because it doesn't, the test is a test of faith. And that's why when we spoke about Mashiach, and we'll finish with this, when we spoke about Mashiach, we said there was a very interesting Yalkut HaRo'im that we mentioned, that said that during that time there's going to become a very, very, in the end of days, that Israel and the Arabs are going to fight over the temple, right? Which is also obviously now. And the Jews are going to say the temple is ours. The Arabs are going to say the temple is ours. And the Jews are going to, and the Arabs are going to say, listen, and the Jews are going to come into agreement. Let's make a sacrifice. Wherever the fire comes down, that's what we decide. So if the fire works for the Jews, you all give us a temple. If the fire goes into Arabs, we'll become, we'll turn to your side. So they said, fine. And the Jews build a temple and the Arabs build a temple. And guess where the fire comes down? To the Arab side. To the Arab side. And the Arab said, now you have to come and convert to us. And it says, never. We're never. You're going to take us by sword, but we're never going to convert. And this, we spoke about it in the Mashiach series, what's going to happen afterwards. They went and they asked Rabbi Yochanan Wassman, is this really what's going to happen? The fire is going to come down. Rabbi Yochanan Wassman said it's not going to be it's going to be exactly like this, but not like this. Meaning that the idea, the final test, before Mashiach comes, is going to be a test in faith. It's going to look like the other side is right. And that is the final test. The final test that we have is the test of Emunah. And that's why many, many rabbis say, the final test that we have to work in our generation is belief in our faith in heaven. A faith in heaven. And that is the underlining problem, and if we look at it, of the entire destruction of the temple. The destruction of the temple of baseless hatred. What is baseless hatred? The only reason that you're hating somebody is because you don't believe that everything comes from God. If you believe that it comes from God, then you're not going to hate anybody. If you're not going to hate anybody, you're going to have a strong faith, then Mashiach is going to come. And this is what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying, that have the fear of people, you should have fear of God like you have the fear of people. Because if you really find out that secret, that God is overseeing anything, then you're not going to have any problems. B'ezrat Hashem, we're not going to deal with that. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll have Mashiach. And B'ezrat Hashem, this Tisha B'Av will not need to be a Tisha B'Av. And we'll have the Bet HaMikdash b'mehera b'yameinu.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.